Welcome to Whiskey's the Journey. My name is Peter Fasciano, and today is Friday, which means I'm doing another Friday flight. And this just so happens to be my last bourbon flight before I move on to my finals. Today, we're looking at my double oaked bourbons. So let's go ahead and jump into this. And then as I'm mixing the glasses up, I'll let you know how this is all working. So bottle number 1, Woodford Reserve Double Oaked. This is coming in at 45.2% ABV, and I paid $52.99. And I'm in Phoenix, Arizona, if you don't know. And that's gonna be in glass number 1. Moving on to bottle number 2, Peerless Double Oak, coming in at 54.2% ABV, and it's Peerless Double Oak, not Peerless Double Oaked, like it is for the Woodford Reserve. And I paid $93.99. It's gonna be in glass number 2. Moving on to bottle number 3. I believe this is the OG, Old Forester 1910, coming in at 46.5% ABV. I paid $62.99. Glass number 3. Let's get on to bottle number 4. And this one might be a little bit controversial. Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel, coming in at 47% ABV. I paid $55.68. And the reason why I'm saying a little controversial, their secondary barrel is toasted. So you let me know in the comments down below if you feel this belongs in this flight with double oaked bourbons. And I think that actually my 5th and final bottle might even be a little bit more controversial, or wondering why I threw this one in here, but I had to. So bottle number 5, Foregate Calvin 60. This is coming in at 62.8% ABV, and it's a $200 bottle. And the reason why I threw this in here is I wanted to see how this stacked up against the less expensive bottles. Also, I'm pulling all of these out of my own collection. So I know there might be some other expressions out there. I just don't have them. And from my collection, these are the bottles that I have that I consider to be double oaked. And I like them, so I wanted to throw them in here to see how they actually do. So that's gonna be in glass number 5. Let me get these things out of the way and then mix this up. All right, so this is how it works. I have everything labeled on the bottom with these little stickers. I'm gonna go through, nose them and taste each one. And then I'm going to go back the other direction, nose them, taste them, take some notes. I'm not gonna actually keep the camera going and talking the entire time. I'm gonna speed that part up. And then by the time I come back, hopefully I will have some notes taken. I'll have an order, and then we will figure out which one of my double oaked bourbons I like the most. Got my water, because I do believe that this is going to be pretty drying with the amount of oak that I'm gonna be getting from these glasses. I have a sheet of paper in front of me so I can take some notes. Actually, you know what? I'm just gonna put this in front of me so I can take notes here. And let's go ahead and get this thing going. So I got my circles, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm gonna keep the lids on this because I know these are pretty strong. Cherry right off the bat. Smells wonderful. Get a little bit of maple syrup, cherry, oak. There is a dark richness to this. Let's go ahead and get it on the palate. Oh, wow, that is fabulous stuff. All right. There is a little bit of dryness that is happening, which I do believe is gonna happen with all of these. There's good, rich, deep flavors. That cherry, that maple syrup note comes through. It's very sweet, and I get a slight amount of spice on the back end. I like that quite a bit. All right, let's go ahead and move on to glass number 2. All right, glass number 2 smells like the outside. It smells a little damp, it smells a little musty. I do get a little bit of oak, but not nearly as much as I did on the first glass. All right, let's get this one on the palate. All right, that one falls a little flat compared to the first one. Thin, outdoorsy, moldy leaves, not moldy leaves, but you know, broken down leaves, earthy, a little bit more on the spicy side. And it does finish with a little bit of sweet oak. It's not bad, but compared to number 1, not the best. We're on to glass number 3. Now, I do believe once I hit the Foregate, it's gonna be very noticeable. All right, just like the other 2, there is some oak to it. This one smells a little bit sour and bitter. I know I don't have any Old Elk in here, but this reminds me a little bit of that distinctive Old Elk note that you usually get on all Old Elk. It's very sweet, very candied. Now, I'm not saying this is exactly like that. It's very subdued, but I do have some comparisons to that. Let's get this one on the palate. Ooh, little punchy. Wow, lots of oak, very drying. That spice and sweet is a really good balance. And if you've been around this channel, you know that I'm not the biggest rye spice or the biggest spice fan in whiskey. The sweet and the spice really need to balance out for me to enjoy it. And I think this has a good balance of sweet and spice. And the ABV is a little bit higher. I like that one quite a bit as well. But the finish is a little drying. So far, I think I like number 1 and number 3. And just like all of the other flights that I'm doing, I like them all. I'm not putting something in here that I dislike. So this is basically trying to figure out the best of the best that I have in my collection. So let's go ahead and move on to glass number 4. This has the most amount of cherry that is jumping out of the glass. Cherry oak. There's a little bit of dampness, a little bit of earthiness to this as well. Almost like, again, like this one had that broken down leafy, earthy note. I get that in here as well. But a lot more cherry and oak coming out of this one than any of the others. Let's get this one on the palate. Oh, I think I just cauterized my esophagus. I think I found the foregate. But oh man, that is good. The amount of cherry and oak. Ooh, maybe a little bit too much spice there. That is spicy on the back end. And even though that cherry is sweet, I think that spice kind of overrides the cherry or that sweetness. Good amounts of oak, high ABV. There's no doubt that that's got to be the foregate. But now that it sits here for a little bit, things are rounding out. The flavors are amplifying. It's the oak, it's the cherry, it's the spice. Maybe slightly too much spice for me. And maybe that's a combination of the heat from the ethanol and the spice. Still very good, but not my favorite. I'm still leaning towards glass number 1. And turning bitter. Turning much bitter on the aftertaste there, on that finish. All right, last glass. Boy, that smells like cotton candy and oak. That has got a delightful nose to it. Good amounts of vanilla. The oak is not dominant like it is on some of the others. This is more candied sweet than anything. Yeah, cotton candy and oak. Let's get it on the palate. Oh, that is well-rounded. That is a nice, easy sipper. Not overly powering with the sweetness. The oak hits that level where I think it's gonna get drying, but it doesn't quite suck the moisture out of my mouth. No spice. I don't think there's any spice to actually talk about there. That's really good too. That's a very easy, you gotta be careful with this one. That's an easy sipper. And there's more of vanilla, oak, brown sugar, and caramel. More of your traditional bourbon notes in this one than any of the others. That's pretty good. All right, so the only thing that I have left to do is run back the other direction. I'll probably have to go back and A/B compare some of these and flip-flop them around. I'm gonna rinse in between, and when I come back, I should have my final results and see which one is going on to the bourbon finals. We'll be right back. All right, I am back and I have a decision. Just like all of these flights, they're extremely difficult to put together in some sort of order. As you're going from left to right, from glass to glass, and you go back the other direction, every one of these profiles end up changing. I do feel that it's important to taste them back to back without rinsing in between, and then sometimes rinsing in between helps, but it's a blind. But I do think that there's a clear winner in this and a clear loser in this. And when I say loser, I'm just saying last place. It's still good, but it just doesn't live up to the rest of them that are in the flight. So here's what I have in 5th place. You probably already figured this out from my initial description. Glass number 5, there is a funky, earthy note to this. It just didn't fit into the lineup. By itself, it might be good, but I think it was overpowered with the flavors and the nose from everything else. So glass number 2 is going to be in my 5th place. I just said funky earth, a little bit of oak, and I ended up getting a raw pancake batter note from it. So in the end, this ended up being in 5th place. My 4th place was right next to it. Going this direction and this direction, this just ended up falling a little bit flat. So I've got a good balance. I think there's a really good balance of the sweet and spice, but the oak is a little bit drying, and there was a cinnamon note that jumped out of this that didn't necessarily fit into the overall palate. And just like this one, there's also a little bit of a funkiness in it. I can't really necessarily put my finger on what that funk is, but that funk kind of put it into 4th place. Now my 3rd place ended up being right next to it. So I'm pretty sure that this is the 4-Gate Calvin 60 or Kelvin 60. This drank really hot. And then with that heat, I also ended up getting an extra amount of black pepper spice that threw the balance completely out. There's a good amount of oak, good amount of cherry. I do get a vanilla cream soda note out of this as well. It could probably stand to put a couple of drops of water in it to calm it down a little bit, but that's not what this video is all about. So that spicy heat, ethanol, drying oak note is gonna throw this one into 3rd place, which leaves these two. My 2nd place bottle ended up being, oh, I just realized this, 5, 4, 3, 2. So this is my 2nd place. I couldn't really find much wrong with this one, with the exception of the low proof. It didn't really seem to drink at an ABV level that I can appreciate, but with the low ABV, the flavor that was coming out of here was traditional bourbon. It was caramel, brown sugar. There was a good amount of sweetness. The oak was at the right level without being drying. It was soft on the palate. You know, people talk about crushable whiskeys, things that you can drink without actually really necessarily thinking about it. And I think that falls into that category. And right towards the tail end of it, I also got a slight amount of like a banana split note to it, like a vanilla ice cream with banana. So that kind of is leaning me towards the Old Forester. But it's good, it's soft, it's sweet, good amount of oak, and the sweet and spice that I'm getting here, actually throw that away. There is no spice. So I think that's why this kind of hit my palate just right. Minus the spice, it might not be necessarily as balanced as it could be. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but maybe this could use a little bit more spice to actually make it a little bit more appealing to me. But whatever the case may be, this is my 2nd place, which leaves my 1st place glass. Overall, I think I've taken the most notes with this one. So I've got the most balanced. I get good amounts of sweet and oak. There is a touch of spice in here, but that spice elevates it just enough to where you know that it's there, but it doesn't overpower the drink. The oak hits the side of my tongue with that tannin note. And if you've been on this channel for a while, you know that I really do end up liking that tannin, that oak tannin on the side of my tongue, and it doesn't go over the top. So I like that. And then finally, I get some good amounts of vanilla, some maple syrup, and it does get to the point where it is drying, but it's not over the top drying. It just gets right to that point and then settles down. And the finish on this lingers. And what I end up getting left over is something that I want to go back to over and over again. Just like glass number 5, this seems to be a pretty crushable bottle as well that you got to really kind of be careful with. And I don't think the ABV on this is very high as well. So that's another thing that you got to kind of, slow yourself down and make sure you're not drinking it too fast. So appreciate what's in the glass, and you can actually sit down with this and, it develops over time and you can actually dissect it. So glass number 1 is going to be moving on to the finals. So let's go ahead and figure out what it is that I've been drinking in the glasses. So glass number 2 is in my 5th place, and this is the Elijah Craig. Okay, so this kind of plays out the way that I thought. Elijah Craig, being the toasted barrel, doesn't really have the dominant oak notes as the rest of them, so that makes sense to me. Glass number 3 was in my 4th place, and this is the Peerless. I have a history with other Peerless bottles, and there is a funk, and this, now that I wrote this down, there is a funkiness in here that I get with Peerless. I like it, but I think it's distinctive Peerless. So that was glass number 3 in 4th place. Glass number 4 in 3rd place was, yeah, that's what I figured. This was the Foregate Calvin 60. Drank a little bit too hot. The flavors that were there as it started to finish and linger in the mouth, that's where this shines. I think the heat, the spice, the ABV, all of that is a little bit overwhelming at the start, but once it sits in the mouth for a little while, it hangs around and the flavors are really good. I do believe that this would do well with a couple of drops of water. And then my 2nd place, which I thought was the Old Forester, is the Old Forester. And I didn't really pick that up until the very, very end. Just that Old Forester banana note started to show through. So that was in 2nd place. And then my 1st place, that's got to be the Woodford Reserve Double Oaked, which it is. And that does not surprise me at all. The more that I have Woodford Reserve, the more I end up liking them. And I'm really starting to appreciate the flavors that the Double Oaked offers at such a low proof. Now in my head, as I started to put this lineup together, I thought the Calvin 60 would have been in 1st place, and I thought the Woodford Reserve would have been in 2nd. But as it turns out, blinds, you never know what you're going to get with the blinds and how things are going to come across. And in today's, Woodford Reserve is moving on to the finals. I still have a couple of Scotch videos to do. Right now in my lineup, I'm taking a look over here. I have my cask strength peated Scotches. I have my non-age stated, non-peated Scotches. And then I have my odd age stated Scotches video to do. And then I'm gonna go ahead and hit the finals with everything and then call this series good and move on to something else. The next thing I have left to do is to create a small little blend with these Double Oaks. I'm guessing the moisture is just gonna be sucked out of my mouth once I taste this. So let me get a Glencairn, do this little mixture and see how it goes. All right, I am going to use the straw and try to get the same amount of each one of these in here instead of pouring. And in case anybody is wondering what happens to the whiskey after I finish, because obviously there is quite a bit in the glass, typically what I'll do is either pour them out, put a cap on them, or put the lids on them, save them for later on in the day or even later on in the week. Depends on my mood. But a lot of times I just end up dumping them. I just never know how I'm gonna feel at the end of the video. All right, this is coming across as very oaky. Do get a little bit of spice. I'm not picking up on any of the cherry, the banana, or that earthy funkiness that I got on some of these individually. I do get a little bit of ethanol, but I would say the brown sugar and the vanilla seem to be the dominant note. All right, let's go ahead and get this thing on the palate. That was a little bit oaky and a little bit nutty. Good sweet, good spice. I think the ABV from the Foregate is helping this quite a bit. Yeah, it's decent. It's not one of the better blends that I've done before, but it's okay. I think if you can mess around with some of the ratios here, I think you could probably come up with something. Whoa, that is dry. I was wondering when that was gonna happen, but that finish is extremely dry. I have like no moisture left in my mouth. So there you go. Another Friday flight completed along with the blend. Let me know in the comments down below if you have had any of these 5 bottles. If you've had them in a flight, let me know where they rank. Even if you haven't had these in a flight, let me know where you think you would place these. Do all those things that YouTubers ask you to do? I guess I'm a YouTuber, so I'm asking you to do this. Like, subscribe, share, comment down below. Give me a like if you end up liking this video. And if you are not subscribed to this channel and you like this type of information, these kinds of videos, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. That's where I'm gonna leave it. Woodford Reserve Double Oaked, moving on to the finals. Wherever you're at in your journey, I hope you're enjoying it, and we'll talk to you later. Bye.